Hello Dub Nation, it's always a thrill to connect with you, especially as we're about to reveal the latest news that could shape the fate of our beloved Golden State Warriors. But before we dive into this whirlwind of information, let me make a friendly request. Show us some love by clicking the like button to strengthen our bond, and hey, if you are not subscribed yet, join our channel for a thrilling and emotional journey. Don't forget to turn on notifications to stay ahead of the game.
Draymond Green survived the trade deadline, but that doesn't mean he's safe, because one move that never happened could still change everything. So why are rumors already building again? And could this summer force the Warriors into a painful decision? The NBA trade deadline has passed, and the Golden State Warriors were active. Yet despite reports they were considering it, Draymond Green was not traded. At first glance, that sounds like stability, but the reality may be much more uncertain. And the biggest reason involves a name every NBA fan knows. Draymond Green remains a Warrior, for now. Even though Golden State explored moves at the deadline, Green stayed put after a potential deal involving Giannis Antetokounmpo never materialized. The two-time MVP is still with the franchise that drafted him, closing the door on what could have been a league-shifting trade. But surviving the deadline doesn't guarantee long-term security, because the real drama may be waiting for the summer. According to a report from Nick Friedel of The Athletic, Green could return to the center of trade talks this summer if he officially decides to exercise his $28 million player option. That single decision could restart everything, and it could place Green directly in the middle of negotiations once again. Green wasn't traded. Giannis wasn't moved, but the possibility hasn't disappeared. Now you might be thinking, if nothing happened, why does this still matter? Because the Warriors didn't just avoid a trade, they may have postponed a massive decision. It's still difficult to imagine Draymond Green wearing another uniform. He represents the franchise in ways that go beyond the stat sheet, and the Warriors likely don't want to part with someone who means that much to their identity. But sometimes, symbolism collides with opportunity. If Golden State wants a real shot at landing Antetokounmpo, Green might have to be included simply to match salaries. Not because either side necessarily wants it, but because the structure of a deal could demand it. On one side, loyalty, legacy, and everything Green represents to the Warriors. On the other, the transformative potential of acquiring a player like Antetokounmpo. One path preserves the past, the other gambles on the future. And neither comes without risk. Remember that for now we mentioned earlier. This is why it matters. Because the conversation isn't over. It may just be paused. Expect more rumors surrounding Green, Antetokounmpo, the Bucks, and the Warriors moving forward. There is one number quietly shaping this entire situation: $28 million. That's the value of Green's player option. If he exercises it, the summer could look very similar to the past few weeks, filled with speculation about what it would take for Golden State to pursue Antetokounmpo, and renewed concern that Green might not finish his career with the Warriors. You might be thinking, would the Bucks even want him? The report suggests Milwaukee would not want a declining veteran. Yet Golden State might still have no choice if matching salaries becomes essential to making a deal work. Sometimes the hardest moves are the only moves available. If trading Green gave the Warriors a real chance at another championship with Stephen Curry, would you do it? Even without the Antetokounmpo deal, the Warriors didn't stand still. After realizing the Bucks were not going to trade their superstar, Golden State shifted strategy. The team completed a deal with the Atlanta Hawks, acquiring Kristaps Porzingis in exchange for Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield. We'll see how that move unfolds. But one thing is already clear. It brings an end to nearly 5 years of conversations and uncertainty surrounding Kuminga in the Bay Area. And remember that massive decision we hinted at earlier? It may still be coming, because a trade for Antetokounmpo wouldn't just tweak the roster, it would transform the franchise. More importantly, it would give the Warriors genuine hope that they could chase another title with Stephen Curry. But that hope may come with a price. Letting go of Draymond Green would be painful. Yet it might also be the only realistic path toward another ring. The deadline passed. Green stayed. But the speculation is far from over. So as the months move forward, prepare for the rumors to return. And when they do, the Warriors could be facing one of the most emotional decisions in franchise history. Sometimes the biggest stories aren't the trades that happen, but the ones still waiting for the right moment. And this one feels far from finished. Subscribe for the latest NBA stories before they explode. And if there's one thing the Warriors understand, it's that windows to compete don't stay open forever. Every decision from this point forward carries extra weight, especially when it involves players who helped define an era. Draymond Green isn't just another name in trade chatter. He is deeply tied to the identity Golden State built over the years, which is exactly why the idea of him being included in a deal feels so significant. But significance doesn't always prevent change. Sometimes it makes the possibility even more dramatic, because when a franchise considers moving a player who represents so much, it signals just how serious the opportunity on the table might be. And that opportunity, at least in theory, is tied to the possibility of acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo. Not today, but perhaps in the conversations that could resurface during the summer. That's what keeps this story alive. The deadline may be over, yet the underlying questions remain unanswered. Will the Warriors prioritize continuity, or will they decide that transformation is worth the emotional cost? You might be thinking, why would a team even entertain that level of disruption? Because the article makes one idea clear. A move for Antetokounmpo would transform the franchise, not adjust it, not slightly improve it, transform it. And when that kind of outcome is even remotely imaginable, teams tend to listen. Still, listening and acting are two very different things. Golden State already showed a willingness to pivot when it became clear the Bucks were not going to trade their superstar. That pivot led to the deal for Kristaps Porzingis, a move that suggests the front office is actively searching for ways to strengthen the team rather than standing still. Yet even that decision exists alongside the lingering uncertainty surrounding Green. Because avoiding a trade now doesn't eliminate the scenario later. It simply pushes the timeline forward. Think about how quickly narratives can change in the NBA. One moment, a player is untouchable. The next, he becomes central to hypothetical negotiations. And Green may once again find himself right in that space, especially if his $28 million player option officially enters the equation. That number doesn't just represent salary, it represents flexibility, structure, and the mechanics required to even discuss a blockbuster move, which is why the summer could start to feel familiar. Speculation, debate, constant questions about what Golden State is willing to sacrifice for a chance at something bigger, and hovering over all of it is a thought that's hard to ignore. Could the only realistic path toward another championship require a goodbye that once felt unthinkable? You might be thinking, is it really possible to separate legacy from strategy? That tension is at the heart of this situation. On one side is everything Green has meant to the organization. On the other is the belief that adding the right piece could reignite title hopes alongside Stephen Curry. Neither direction is simple. Both demand conviction. And until a definitive choice is made, the uncertainty becomes part of the story. For now, the Warriors move forward with the roster decisions already completed. But the quiet anticipation of what could come next never fully disappears, because rumors have a way of returning, especially when the foundation for them never truly goes away. So the next few months may not bring immediate answers. Instead, they may bring growing curiosity, more conversations, more analysis about what the Warriors value most, preserving a defining partnership or chasing the possibility of another banner. And if those rumors do return, they won't just be about roster construction. They'll be about direction, about how a franchise balances appreciation for its past with urgency about its future. Until then, Draymond Green remains exactly where fans expect to see him, in a Warriors uniform. But as this situation has already shown, for now can be one of the most powerful phrases in the NBA, because it leaves room for everything to change, and it reminds us that some of the biggest turning points don't arrive with the deadline. They build quietly, waiting for the moment when a team decides it cannot afford to wait any longer. Edited version title: Warriors shock Jonathan Kuminga with unexpected Hawks. Trade hook: Jonathan Kuminga wanted a fresh start. He got it, just not where anyone expected. A trade sent the 23-year-old forward to Atlanta, and the reaction was reportedly shock. So did the Warriors grant his wish, or quietly make his path even harder? Quick context. The Golden State Warriors made a stunning move Wednesday night. They traded Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield to the Atlanta Hawks for veteran center Kristaps Porzingis. While the deal gave Kuminga the departure he wanted, it also delivered a destination that reportedly caught him off guard. And now, his future may be just as uncertain as it was before. What happened? Jonathan Kuminga is no longer a Warrior. Golden State honored his desire to leave the franchise, opening the door to a completely new chapter. But that chapter began with surprise. Dalton Johnson of NBC Sports Bay Area reported that Kuminga was shocked to be sent to Atlanta, a destination described as unexpected for the former 7th overall pick. And that single detail says a lot. Because leaving a team is one thing, landing somewhere you didn't anticipate is another. Kuminga may appreciate the clean slate, yet the situation he's stepping into raises immediate questions. Reset recap. He wanted out of Golden State, but the place he landed might not match the opportunity he imagined. Now you might be thinking, isn't any fresh start a good thing for a young player? Not always, especially when the path to growth isn't clearly defined. Why it's important Atlanta may not be the ideal landing spot for Kuminga. Opportunity matters for a 23-year-old still chasing the star trajectory he believes is within reach. And right now, that opportunity doesn't appear guaranteed. The Hawks already have Jalen Johnson, a player from the same 2021 draft class with a similar profile. Unlike Kuminga, Johnson has already developed into a star and became the face of the franchise following the trade of Trae Young last month. That changes the landscape immediately. Because when a team already has its centerpiece, every newcomer must find his place around that reality. Open loop. And Kuminga's place might not be where he hoped. Atlanta also features Zachary Researcher, the first overall pick in the draft, a player expected to remain ahead of Kuminga in the development hierarchy. Put those pieces together, and the picture becomes clearer. Kuminga will likely begin his Hawks journey coming off the bench, a role that stands in sharp contrast to the one he reportedly sought elsewhere. Before the trade, the Sacramento Kings and Phoenix Suns had pursued him aggressively in restricted free agency, promising a meaningful starting role. That promise matters, because for emerging players, minutes are more than playing time. They are proof of belief. Fan question: if you were Kuminga, would you prioritize a fresh start or a guaranteed starting role? Key numbers. There is another layer quietly shaping Kuminga's future. Atlanta controls a $24.3 million automatic renewal option for next season. That number places pressure on what happens next. Kuminga now needs enough opportunity to justify the team exercising that option or to position himself for a new multi-year deal. And if those opportunities don't come, the uncertainty only grows. You might be thinking, what happens if he remains a reserve? The answer could send him right back to the free agent market. And without a strong role, securing another contract worth more than $20 million annually, like the one he received from the Warriors last offseason, would become far more difficult. Open loop payoff. Remember the idea of a fresh start? It only works if the environment allows you to rise. What's next for the Hawks? Betting on Kuminga could still prove worthwhile, especially for a team currently 2 games below 500 and not competing for a playoff spot this season. There is room for experimentation, room for development, room to see whether untapped potential can finally surface. But from Kuminga's perspective, time is everything. This is already his 5th NBA season. Potential eventually needs to turn into production, and production requires chances. Golden State may have granted his request to leave, yet the destination raises the possibility that his climb could become even steeper. Because sometimes a change of scenery doesn't simplify the journey. It complicates it. Final reset recap. Kuminga got the exit he wanted. What he didn't necessarily get was clarity. Still, a new organization brings new voices, new systems, and new possibilities. There is reason for excitement, but also reason for urgency. The Warriors moved forward by acquiring Kristaps Porzingis. Meanwhile, Kuminga steps into an environment that may still be searching for the best way to unlock what he can become. And that tension will define the next phase of his career. Closing. A trade can change a player's address overnight. But earning the role you believe you deserve, that takes much longer. For Jonathan Kuminga, the opportunity is real, just not guaranteed. And now the league will be watching to see whether this unexpected turn becomes the breakthrough he's been waiting for, or another chapter of uncertainty. CTA. Subscribe for the NBA stories that shape the league before everyone else catches on. 5 alternative titles. Jonathan Kuminga, reportedly shocked by Hawks trade Warriors. Grant Kuminga's wish, but at what cost? Unexpected trade leaves. Kuminga, facing uncertain role, Hawks. Deal could redefine Jonathan Kuminga's future, fresh start or tougher path. Kuminga's trade explained, 2-sentence. YouTube description. Jonathan Kuminga finally got his exit from the Warriors, but his reported reaction to landing in Atlanta tells a deeper story. Here's why this shocking trade could shape the most important stretch of his young career. Hashtags. NBA, Shakhtar Warriors. Jonathan Kuminga, Shakhtar Hawks. NBA trades. Basketball news, Shakhtar Golden State Warriors. Atlanta Hawks, Shakhtar NBA rumors. Kristaps Porzingis. NBA news, Buddy Hield, cap cut. TTS version. Jonathan Kuminga wanted a fresh start, and he got one, just not where anyone expected. A trade sent the 23-year-old forward to Atlanta, and the reaction was reportedly shock. So did the Warriors grant his wish, or quietly make his path even harder? The Golden State Warriors made a stunning move Wednesday night. They traded Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield to the Atlanta Hawks for veteran center Kristaps Porzingis. While the deal gave Kuminga the departure he wanted, it also delivered a destination that reportedly caught him off guard. And now, his future may be just as uncertain as it was before. Jonathan Kuminga is no longer a Warrior. Golden State honored his desire to leave the franchise, opening the door to a completely new chapter. But that chapter began with surprise. Dalton Johnson of NBC Sports Bay Area reported that Kuminga was shocked to be sent to Atlanta, a destination described as unexpected for the former 7th overall pick. And that single detail says a lot, because leaving a team is one thing. Landing somewhere you didn't anticipate is another. Kuminga may appreciate the clean slate, yet the situation he's stepping into raises immediate questions. He wanted out of Golden State, but the place he landed might not match the opportunity he imagined. Now you might be thinking, isn't any fresh start a good thing for a young player? Not always, especially when the path to growth isn't clearly defined. Atlanta may not be the ideal landing spot for Kuminga. Opportunity matters for a 23-year-old still chasing the star trajectory he believes is within reach. And right now, that opportunity doesn't appear guaranteed. The Hawks already have Jalen Johnson, a player from the same 2021 draft class with a similar profile. Unlike Kuminga, Johnson has already developed into a star and became the face of the franchise following the trade of Trae Young last month. Because when a team already has its centerpiece, every newcomer must find his place around that reality, and Kuminga's place might not be where he hoped. Atlanta also features Zachary Risacher, the first overall pick in the draft, a player expected to remain ahead of Kuminga in the development hierarchy. Put those pieces together, and the picture becomes clearer. Kuminga will likely begin his Hawks journey coming off the bench. a role that stands in sharp contrast to the one he reportedly sought elsewhere. Before the trade, the Sacramento Kings and Phoenix Suns had pursued him aggressively in restricted free agency, promising a meaningful starting role. Because for emerging players, minutes are more than playing time. They are proof of belief. If you were Kuminga, would you prioritize a fresh start or a guaranteed starting role? There is another layer quietly shaping Kuminga's future. Atlanta controls a $24.3 million automatic renewal option for next season. That number places pressure on what happens next. Kuminga now needs enough opportunity to justify the team exercising that option, or to position himself for a new multi-year deal. And if those opportunities don't come, the uncertainty only grows. You might be thinking, what happens if he remains a reserve? The answer could send him right back to the free agent market. And without a strong role, securing another contract worth more than $20 million annually, like the one he received from the Warriors last offseason, would become far more difficult. Remember the idea of a fresh start? It only works if the environment allows you to rise. For the Hawks, betting on Kuminga could still prove worthwhile, especially for a team currently 2 games below 500 and not competing for a playoff spot this season. There is room for experimentation, room for development, room to see whether untapped potential can finally surface. But from Kuminga's perspective, time is everything. This is already his 5th NBA season. Potential eventually needs to turn into production, and production requires chances. Golden State may have granted his request to leave, yet the destination raises the possibility that his climb could become even steeper, because sometimes a change of scenery doesn't simplify the journey, it complicates it. Kuminga got the exit he wanted. What he didn't necessarily get was clarity. Still, a new organization brings new voices, new systems, and new possibilities. There is reason for excitement, but also reason for urgency. The Warriors moved forward by acquiring Kristaps Porzingis. Meanwhile, Kuminga steps into an environment that may still be searching for the best way to unlock what he can become. And that tension will define the next phase of his career. A trade can change a player's address overnight, but earning the role you believe you deserve, that takes much longer. For Jonathan Kuminga, the opportunity is real, just not guaranteed. And now, the league will be watching to see whether this unexpected turn becomes the breakthrough he's been waiting for, or another chapter of uncertainty. And when a player reaches this stage of his career, perception starts to matter almost as much as performance. Around the league, situations like this often shape how a player is evaluated moving forward, not just for what he can do, but for where teams believe he fits. For Kuminga, Atlanta now becomes more than a destination. It becomes a proving ground. Every rotation decision will carry meaning. Every stretch of minutes will feel like an opportunity to answer lingering questions about his untapped potential. Because the reality is simple. When expectations follow you, silence can be interpreted in many ways. If his role stays limited, observers may wonder whether the environment is holding him back, or whether the opportunity reflects how teams currently view him. That is why the early phase of this transition could be so important. First impressions inside a new organization often set the tone for everything that follows. And with Atlanta controlling the $24.3 million automatic renewal option for next season, the timeline quietly accelerates. There is no endless runway, only a window that must be maximized. At the same time, the Hawks are in a position where evaluation makes sense. Being 2 games below 500 and outside the playoff race creates space for experimentation, space to test combinations, space to discover whether a player once selected 7th overall can evolve into something more. But opportunity in theory does not always translate into opportunity on the floor. That uncertainty is what makes this moment feel so delicate. Because Kuminga did not just leave Golden State. He left behind familiarity, a system he understood, a franchise that had already invested in him enough to give him a contract worth more than $20 million annually last offseason. Now he steps into a structure where hierarchy already exists, where Jalen Johnson has emerged as the face of the franchise, where the first overall pick, Zachary Rissacher, is expected to remain ahead in the development process. Competition like that can sharpen a player, but it can also narrow the path, and when the path narrows, patience becomes harder to maintain, especially for someone eager to prove he deserves more. From Golden State's perspective, the move signals commitment to a different direction. Acquiring a veteran center in Kristaps Porzingis suggests a focus on reshaping the roster with experience. It also marks a clear turning point, one that closes the Warriors' chapter of Kuminga's career and shifts the responsibility of his development elsewhere. Yet trades rarely affect just one side. They ripple outward. Fans begin to question how the young forward will adapt. Analysts begin to track his role. Executives across the league quietly observe whether a new environment unlocks what has not fully surfaced yet. Because potential is one of the NBA's most valuable currencies. But eventually, it must be converted into impact. For Kuminga, that conversion cannot stay theoretical. Not with a contract decision looming. Not with expectations still attached to his draft status. Not with teams remembering the promise that made him such a high selection. There is also a psychological layer to consider. Being described as shocked by the destination hints at how quickly the business side of the league can reshape a career. Players can request change, yet still be surprised by where that change leads, and adapting to that reality is part of the professional journey. What happens next will depend on how quickly Kuminga turns surprise into motivation, how effectively he uses whatever role is placed in front of him, and whether those opportunities, however large or small, become stepping stones rather than obstacles. Because in moments like this, careers can quietly pivot, sometimes toward stardom, sometimes toward uncertainty. The difference often lies in timing and trust from the organization. Atlanta now holds that influence. Golden State, meanwhile, moves forward knowing it granted the player his exit, even if the landing spot raises questions about whether it truly sets him up to maximize what he can become in his fifth NBA season. And that is what makes this story far from finished. A new jersey does not automatically bring clarity. It brings possibility, but also pressure. So as Kuminga begins this next chapter, the central question remains unchanged. Will this unexpected move finally create the conditions for him to grow into the player he aims to be? Or will the search for the right opportunity continue? The Golden State Warriors believed they were positioning themselves for a franchise-altering move. Instead, they may have watched a major opportunity slip away, all while chasing a possibility that was never truly real. The Milwaukee Bucks never seriously engaged in trade negotiations involving Giannis Antetokounmpo, and those conversations may have quietly closed the door on Golden State's chance to acquire a former Defensive Player of the Year. According to ESPN's Ramona Shelburne on Thursday's episode of NBA Today, the Warriors had been in active discussions with the Memphis Grizzlies in recent weeks. The reported offer included 2 first-round picks as part of a package for two-time All-Star Jaren Jackson Jr., signaling just how aggressive Golden State was willing to be. For a moment, it looked like the Warriors were on the verge of landing a player who could immediately elevate the roster. Then, everything shifted. As soon as Antetokounmpo appeared to be available, Golden State pulled back from the Jackson Jr. negotiations and redirected its full attention toward the two-time MVP. The focus became clear. If there was even a small chance to pursue a generational superstar, it demanded complete commitment. But that opportunity never materialized. Multiple reports indicated the Bucks had no intention of trading the face of their franchise. The talks surrounding Antetokounmpo faded just as quickly as they had gained momentum, leaving the Warriors without the superstar they hoped for, and without the all-star they had nearly secured. While Golden State waited, Memphis acted. The Grizzlies finalized a massive trade with the Utah Jazz, sending Jackson as part of an 8-player blockbuster that also returned 3 first-round picks. Those selections may not ultimately carry the same value as what the Warriors were initially prepared to offer, depending on the years involved, but the outcome is what matters most. Jackson is no longer available. In what now feels like a calculated market test, the Bucks floated the idea of Antetokounmpo to gauge interest, and the Warriors responded immediately. By doing so, they created an opening for another Western Conference team to step in and capture a difference-making talent, a team that could potentially move ahead of them next season. And just like that, the landscape shifted. Instead of acquiring a 26-year-old, 2-time All-Star entering his prime, a player capable of raising the team's ceiling right away and possibly anchoring the franchise for years, Golden State pivoted toward another former All-Star center. This time, Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis earned his lone All-Star selection in 2018 and has played more than 57 games only once over the past decade. The move itself is not what defines this situation. What lingers is the contrast between the certainty the Warriors once had within reach and the possibility they ultimately chose to chase. Because in many ways, the past few weeks mirror a pattern that has followed Golden State for years. The organization has consistently kept Antetokounmpo in its long-term vision, often passing on other potential deals to preserve the flexibility needed to pursue the 10-time All-Star if he ever became available. So when the league, and the Warriors themselves, believed that moment had finally arrived, the reaction was immediate. Only it turned out the moment never existed, and the cost may have been significant. Golden State potentially lost the chance to acquire a player entering his prime, one who could have strengthened the roster instantly while still fitting into the team's future. Players with that combination of impact and longevity rarely become attainable. That is why this situation is defined less by the Porzingis trade and more by the shadow of what could have been. The Bucks matched the Warriors step for step in this quiet battle of leverage and patience. When it was over, Milwaukee still had its superstar, and Golden State was left watching Jackson begin a new chapter elsewhere. Not every missed move becomes a mistake, but when a franchise comes that close to securing elite talent, the questions tend to linger. What if they had stayed the course? What if they had chosen certainty over speculation? Those are the thoughts that echo long after the trade window closes. In the NBA, ambition often requires risk. Teams must decide whether to act on the opportunity in front of them or hold out for something even greater. The Warriors chose to aim higher, believing the reward could justify the gamble. This time, the gamble didn't pay off. And now, as Golden State moves forward with its reshaped roster, the story becomes a reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. Not only because of the deals a team makes, but because of the ones it doesn't. The Warriors chased the biggest prize on the board. But when the dust settled, the player they nearly had was gone. And the superstar they hoped for was never leaving. Moments like this tend to reshape how a franchise evaluates risk. Because when a team commits its attention to a single possibility, every alternative quietly moves on without them. For the Warriors, the sequence is impossible to ignore. They stepped away from advanced talks for Jaren Jackson Jr., redirected their energy toward Giannis Antetokounmpo, and ultimately watched both paths close. That kind of outcome doesn't just affect the present. It influences how future opportunities are approached. Around the league, patience is often praised. But patience can quickly turn into hesitation when another team is willing to act faster. And Memphis did exactly that. By completing the deal with Utah, the Grizzlies removed all uncertainty from their side of the equation. There was no waiting, no chasing hypotheticals, only a decision and immediate execution. Meanwhile, Golden State was left adjusting after the market had already shifted. There is also a psychological impact when a team comes close to a major acquisition and falls short. It forces difficult internal questions about timing, priorities, and how aggressively to pursue the next opportunity. Because situations like this rarely happen in isolation, they become reference points. The Warriors have spent years keeping Antetokounmpo within their long-term imagination, protecting flexibility in case the unimaginable suddenly became possible. That level of discipline reflects ambition, the desire to remain positioned for transformational talent whenever it might surface. But ambition always walks a thin line with opportunity cost. Every move not taken carries a silent consequence. In this case, the consequence may have been passing on a player widely seen as capable of making an immediate difference while still offering long-term value. And when that type of player is only 26 years old, the sense of what slipped away can feel even heavier. At the same time, the Bucks emerge from this sequence exactly where they started, still anchored by their franchise legend. Even the appearance of availability was enough to command league-wide attention, reinforcing just how influential Antetokounmpo's name remains in any trade landscape. For Golden State, the aftermath is less about regret and more about direction. Acquiring Kristaps Porzingis signals a commitment to move forward rather than dwell on what didn't happen. Yet the comparison between the path they nearly took and the one they ultimately followed will naturally invite scrutiny. That scrutiny is part of operating at the highest level. Every front office understands that roster building is often defined by split-second judgment calls. When to wait, when to pivot, and when to close the deal before the window disappears. Here, the window closed quickly. Another layer to consider is how the Western Conference continues to evolve. Allowing a potential rival to secure a major talent introduces a competitive variable that can echo beyond a single transaction. Because talent doesn't just strengthen one team, it reshapes the balance around it. And balance is everything when margins are thin. Still, the Warriors are no strangers to high-stakes decisions. Their recent history has been built on bold thinking, long-term planning, and the willingness to pursue greatness, even when the path is uncertain. That mindset helps explain why the possibility of Antetokounmpo was so compelling in the first place. Players of that magnitude rarely become available, and when even a rumor suggests they might be, hesitation can feel more dangerous than action. Yet this situation underscores a reality every contender eventually faces. Not every door that appears open is meant to be walked through. Now the focus shifts from what was nearly achieved to what comes next. Golden State must integrate the pieces it chose, reinforce the direction it believes in, and move ahead without the player who once seemed within reach. The league, meanwhile, will continue to watch how this decision ages, whether it becomes a footnote or a turning point. Because time has a way of revealing the true weight of these moments. If Porzingis thrives, the narrative could soften. If the absence of Jackson is felt, the questions may only grow louder. Either way, the episode stands as a reminder of how quickly perception can change in the NBA. One week, a team appears close to a defining addition. The next, the opportunity belongs to someone else. And perhaps the most lasting takeaway is this: chasing a dream can elevate a franchise's vision, but it can also leave them vulnerable when reality moves in a different direction. The Warriors aimed for the highest possible outcome. Instead, they were reminded that in a league driven by timing and leverage, even the strongest pursuit can end with a quiet sense of what might have been.